Well, hello and welcome to the Voices to Action podcast, where we're exploring how fan, customer, and employee voices drive real business outcomes. My name is Ben Hookway. I'm the CEO of Relative Insight. And together on this podcast, we're trying to uncover the why behind key business KPIs so we can turn those KPIs into feedback, into fuel for growth. So this week, we're talking about sports. So we've got some new seasons coming upon us and some major changes in pro and college sports in the States and some other interesting developments with UK sports with American ownership coming in. So we thought this would be a good time to get under the covers of that. And we've got a fantastic guest today. We've got Pete Woodward. He was a former head of consumer insights at the LA Clippers. So for those who don't know who the LA Clippers are, they are an NBA team. And when he was at the LA Clippers and the Intuit Dome, which is their stadium, Pete created the department that enabled decision-making across the whole organization so they could make decisions based on the understanding of the mind of the fan. So it's sort of layering in the why to the what to create outcomes that maximize the end user experience. So, Pete, thank you for coming on. It's a real pleasure to have you. Really excited about this. Maybe before you get into the LA Clippers, I think you've got a really interesting background because it's not just sports. So I'd love to hear a bit more about the background and maybe how that's informed your view about how you approach the fan experience problems.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. Yeah, most of my career before coming to the Clippers was within CPG, and prior to the Clippers, PepsiCo, Red Bull, and some others. What's really interesting about CPG is it's all about consumer centricity. It's understanding what the consumer wants, what they don't even know that they want. What is the problem that we're trying to solve when we're looking at new products? And when you look at CPG, and we've all been here, the Christmas past of grocery aisles is just littered with all these products and these innovations, which sounded great. Like this is going to be awesome, but if it's not taken with the drive of what is my problem to solve, what is it that the consumer needs, then I'm barking up the wrong tree. And it's a similar thing in sports. It's also this idea that when I was in the CPG world, a lot of what you had to do was continual evolution. And then the classic example there is Kmart. I ask my kids, "What do you think of Kmart?" and they just get these blank looks. Like, oh, never heard of them. But biggest, and for younger people who are listening to this, Kmart, biggest retailer in the world in the 70s, became a closed shop, didn't want to work with anybody, thought what they could do and they could do forever and remain the biggest retailer. And the issues that we have as humans is we can't think past a year in the future. It's why we have so much trouble saving for the future and retirement or eating well, even though I know I should. Yeah. It's over a year in the future. It's the same thing in business and in sports and in CPG, because we tend to think what we're doing right now is all that matters is how we're going to tweak in the next year and evolve. And so when that really gets into what's relevant within sports and the fan experience is it's very easy to look back and what has worked in the past and just doing this rinse and repeat. And it can't be that. We're in a really quickly evolving and changing environment in everything we do. And sports is absolutely there too. And it's trying to make sure that when we are creating solutions, when we're trying to understand the fan, we are actually listening to them. We're putting the fan front and center of what we're doing, rather than maybe just what we've historically done, so as we can continue down that path. So it's a really long answer, Ben, but yeah, when you're looking back into the ties to CPG and sports and entertainment, very similar. It definitely has its nuances and they definitely have their differences, but at the core of both is understanding the fan, understanding the consumer, and doing things with that mindset versus what I think may just be best.
Yeah. So I kind of feel compelled at this point, having heard both of our accents, to point out that obviously Pete is a Brit. I'm a Brit. I've lived in the States and kind of quite familiar with US sports. And obviously Pete is in Los Angeles, having done his roles there. Um, it is probably worth pointing out, maybe dwelling on the differences, I think, between the sort of attitudes to fan experience in the States versus, say, a market like the UK, where, my opinion is that in America, they understand they are in the entertainment business. Um, and I was wondering whether entering the fan experience realm as a Brit, you were kind of surprised by the attitude, whether you knew that was coming, whether you kind of see any sort of big differences.
Yeah, it is really interesting to see the differences of how American sports are perceived versus sports in a lot of the rest of the world. And it is an entertainment business. I mean, I remember back in the UK when Premier League came in and they tried to have the cheerleaders and all the stuff, and it lasted, I don't know, a couple of games, and it went down like an absolute lead balloon because I care about the game and I care about what's going on. I think the biggest thing that surprised me along those lines, Ben, is that we've got these jumbotrons and you've got these big screens, and your team will be down by 20 points with 3 minutes left, and they'll zoom in on a camera action, and they'll be fans of your team because they'll have the outfits on,
Yeah.
and it'll be a dance cam, and they're dancing and happy. Now, if I'm at my soccer team back in England and we're 3-0 down with 3 minutes left, you put a camera on me, I'm looking miserable. I'm just looking so miserable. And so it is more of an entertainment take here, not when the games get serious and when it's towards the end of the season and the playoffs. And maybe in football it's slightly different because of the fewer games, but there's definitely much more of an entertainment angle here than we see in other places.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. It really is quite something in America. So it's my favorite thing to do whenever I don't live there anymore, unfortunately. But every time I'm back over, I'll always try and make it a sporting event. Okay, so let's talk about sort of fan experience. Can we define that a little bit here? Fan experience might mean one thing to, one team and another to another. So how do you define it within, say, the business of sport?
It's really interesting. If you were looking 20 years ago, fan experience really was what happened at the game. So whether I'm at the arena, I'm at the stadium, I go, I watch the game, I'm either happy or miserable afterwards. Maybe I'll have a moan with somebody at work the next day who's a fan of the same team as I am. And then it sort of fades from my memory, and then the next game comes along and then I start to get my highs and lows again. So your fan experience was very much based around the locality and where I was. Obviously, with the social voice and the change that's happened there has completely changed where that is. We're now in a point where it's being thrown at you 24/7 if you want it to be. And if I'm a diehard fan, I probably am. I'm subscribed to everything. I'm listening to everything. I'm watching everything. And so where I used to be able to forget the losses, or I just saw the wins went away. The wins are much more important. The losses are much worse. It's constantly in my mind. I've also got this voice that only used to happen when I was at a game. So if we're all upset or we're all happy, we're doing it there. We're now doing it constantly all the time. And the point of that is that the fan experience is now much broader than it used to be. It's fandom has become global. It was always global. 20 years ago, yes, you saw Man United shirts in New York, but it was still, I'd watch the game on a TV at the pub with friends and then forget about it. Whereas now, if you've got a LA Clippers fan and they're in Melbourne, but they're actually tuned in sort of all the time. So global fandom has changed, which means that how we need to understand our fans has become a lot broader than it ever used to be. It's much more than just fill the arena, fill the stadium, have a good time, hopefully the team does well, and then we can manage that moving forward. That whole ecosystem is just complete evolution.
So, and is it a kind of, in your view, like consistent definition, and, relating it back to the business, of sport, is it, in your view, a consistent KPI that people are measuring? Is it something which people are using as a KPI? If they are using it as a KPI, is it a consistently measured KPI? Is it related to the bottom line? So, if the KPI goes up or goes down, people understand that that will have an impact on the bottom line. What can you sort of talk a little bit about the metrics and kind of what's viewed as important at the stakeholder level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so it can be really interesting in sports. So core KPI, your NPS. We all use NPS, and we use it for
Right.
it. The issue that you get in with NPS in sports is that it's a destination. So very different to a consumer brand or consumer experience because it's where something is. Now, the point of that is that I might live a long way away, or as we have in LA, we have a lot of tourists. So you'll come in, come to a game because I want to see a basketball game, go off. And the way that people interpret NPS is then, would I recommend this to a friend or family? Well, no, because they live 6,000 miles away. Wouldn't do it. Not that I didn't have a good time. Or, we saw this quite a lot, that people would then quantify why they gave a lower NPS score. It was, well, all my friends and family are fans of another team, so I'm not going to recommend it because they're not going to come. I had a brilliant time. So your KPIs are slightly different. You need to be able to understand the overall experience. And then, of course, you've got all the basics. So tell me about the bathrooms and the lines and the food and bev. That's fine. And that's good. And over time, you can measure those, and it is useful to be able to trend them, and you can see what's going where. But what is really critical is, how can I change things for next week or next game? How can I quickly make changes as to what's going on? So if all I know is that the bathroom's got a 2 out of 5, but I don't know why. Is it because they were dirty? Is it because the paper towels weren't working? Was the water cold? Was the attendant grumpy and just didn't want to help me with something? If I don't understand the why behind it. So yes, the ratings are important. And yes, the numeric scores are tracked and to understand, but that's more on a longer term basis. So how have I done this season versus last season? I've put these changes in place. How's it impacted it? But to make change, I need to understand the why. I have to understand the why behind these things. And the only way you can do that, well, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can write the longest survey of all time that no one's ever going to respond to, and then get no responses, or you can analyze your open-ended data. So the importance of that then becomes critical to be able to make those changes we need to make.
Yeah. So in terms of, I guess there's the typical things you would expect in an open end of someone who's visiting the stadium. So, concessions, hygiene, facilities, parking, all of this kind of stuff. Maybe we'll come back to that. But have there been any surprising factors affecting the fan experience score for you that seem to be moving the needle that you would never expect to?
Yeah, it's when you talk to the fans, what you might see in the numeric scores is everything looks brilliant. Everyone's really positive. Part of the problem you've got is that a core fan is going to give you good scores because it's your team. I care. I really care. Now, again, taking me back to consumer goods, I might really enjoy a can of Pepsi and I really like it, but it's not sitting in my brain. I'm not thinking about it apart from when I want to have that drink. Sports teams, I care about so much. And it's sort of, people will talk about, it's my team. It's my team. And so, yeah, I'm going to give you good scores. But then what I found really interesting was when you start to dig into the open ends, they'll say, yeah, really enjoyed the experience. I had to wait 10 minutes to use the bathroom after I left. And you give me 5 out of 5 on the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Because it's my team. But the lines were really bad. You wouldn't know it. There are these things that you wouldn't know because of that sentiment that people have.
Yeah, it's funny this. I think, it's just something we see quite a lot. I think so the word sentiment is used quite a lot at the moment. And it's a word which I'm never particularly comfortable with because some people, I think, when they use sentiment, they say positive or negative, which is quite a reductive thing because it's very rare that, an experience is either wholly positive or wholly negative. There's a lot of nuance in there, and there's a lot of nuance around maybe what they thought was good or what they thought was bad, and then a lot of nuance around how they talk about those issues as well. So, yeah, I can fully understand why that is sometimes a red herring. Your KPI is a red herring, and maybe you need, even though your KPI might be really, really strong, you still need to be looking at the open ends to understand what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You're getting artificial high or an artificial low, on exactly the flip point. And we would always ask and preface when we do post-event work is take out of your responses what happened on the court or what happened on the field, because it wants to be about the broader experience. But if you just got blown out by 40 points,
Yeah.
it impacts you. It truly does, which is a whole nother thing where you want to be able to create some of that algorithm to understand score and report. But it's really hard, especially in baseball or basketball where you have so many games, because as we were talking about earlier, a game might not really matter. It sort of does matter, but then it's against a certain opponent, but it's on a certain night. And you've got so many nuances there as to what impact on a broader perspective. And as much as you ask fans to take that out of their mind, it's just inherently subconsciously comes out for them.
You see, that'd be an interesting metadata point, I think. So, obviously a relative insight, almost everything we do is kind of comparing one set of language against another to drive, nuances around what's actually different, what's driving KPIs through the differences in language. And so, one of the metadata points you can compare by, could be, win-loss or degree of win, degree of loss, and then seeing what the differences are. But before we get into that, it'd be useful to understand what feedback, when we've talked about surveys, can you maybe just give an overview of, what your feedback mechanisms are and then when you tend to do them?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as all teams do, critical to understand to do the post-event survey and to research to understand what's happened. Because if I want to be able to make quick change, if I'm finding that all my staff are grumpy or they are really, really happy and helpful, I need to be able to layer into both of those things. And you want that response as quick as you can. But part of the issue, though, that you run into with sports or entertainment as a whole is don't bug me when it's going on. I don't mind you bug me if I'm drinking my can of Pepsi, but don't bug me when I'm watching the game or I'm watching my favorite artist or whatever that might be. And then probably don't bug me straight away afterwards, because I'm either going somewhere with friends, or I'm trying to beat the traffic, or I'm trying to get out of this line of the bathrooms or whatever that might be. So you are shackled a little bit as far as when can I look for those insights? When can I talk to people? You can do intercepts, but it becomes very hard, and you only get it. The problem is, if I do intercepts during or after a game, the only people that are going to talk to me are the same sort of people, because there's a whole group of people that are never going to do it. So you're not really getting a cross representation of who I need to talk to. If you give people the breather, then you're able to do that. And we talked a little earlier about like the core KPIs. You always want to be asking those things, the core things that really matter to your arena or stadium. It's going to differ a little team by team, but the general things are the same: the cleanliness, the lines, or those things. So the criticality of being able to do that and measure, but it's giving respondents the voice, and it is having the open ends. Nobody needs to put 20 open ends in, but it's tell me about why your overall experience was great or bad, or why your NPS score was whatever, or however you want to place it. And then that's the gold mine to be able to take that openness. Again, fans really care, so they will tell you what they're thinking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of passion there. There's a lot of great value. But it's also, without getting ahead of ourselves, it's one of those things that they used to sort of just go into a black box, because if I'm getting hundreds of these each time, unless I've got a ridiculously large insights team, I can't manually go through it. So then you end up with just the scores and you don't get the why.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, we're big proponents of going into the open ends and analyzing that at scale, because that will tell you why your KPI is what it is. It will tell you why your KPI is going up or going down or staying the same. And of course, a lot of people in our industry talk about the why, but I always feel like it's always deeper than that. So, knowing why is useful, but there's other elements of that there must be. So, there's no point you sort of reporting to your senior stakeholders saying, yeah, that problem we had 3 months ago, I know why we had that problem.
Yeah.
So, what are the sort of aspects of, particularly when it comes to analytics, like what actually moves the needle? Like what sort of capabilities, characteristics of the analytics kind of are actually useful to somebody in your position?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's if I found out that for some reason all the water is cold in a bathroom, it's no good me finding that out 3 months later. No, I need to know it before the next game, and I need to be able to make the change, and I need to be able to affect what's going on. And so it really is the speed to insight that's so important. You don't know what's going to come up. You don't know what surprises are there, or somebody will report that they've twisted their ankle and then they had to get a car home or go to the hospital. Well, those things. If I'm responding to you, because there's always some fans that are going to say things, and you come in and they'll leave their email address, and quite clearly they want to be responded to. But if you're not responding to them in short manner, then you've lost them, and you lost that fan, and then you get the negativity from them. You need to be able to not just make the changes that you might need to do within the stadium or the arena, but you also need to make sure that if there's any critical components and fans that we need to be talking to, then we need to be able to do that on a quick basis. And that just does not come out in the quant data that's coming out of it. It is in that qual, but you've got to be able to get to that.
And do you find that it's hard to persuade other people in the organization that actually deeper, serious insight on the qual is a business benefit? So, some stakeholders might think, oh, we're surveying people and that's enough. Is it hard to persuade them that actually, if we don't understand the detail, we don't know why in time, then we are losing revenue, we are losing season tickets, we are, we've got retention problems. Is it hard to convince people of that these problems are real and they exist?
Not really. I mean, credit is I would give to the senior stakeholders that we see across sports. They want that because they want to be able to. It's all about driving fandom and fan levels, and being able to create the best product possible. And the way that we do that is understanding where the pain points or the positive points are. How do we lean into what's really working? How do we make sure we address where the problems are? I think where the hesitation is that, yeah, but how can you get that information? How can we get it and do it in a usable time? It's a lot of responses. We can just use the quant and to understand it. Well, what we need to do as researchers is to be able to show, no, in almost real time, I can find out where the issues are. We can respond to those. This is how we would act upon them. And yeah, the senior stakeholders absolutely want to be able to do that because, again, it's all about increasing the value that we can provide to our fans.
Yeah. And is there you're right, in other conversations, we've also talked about, so speed is key, like knowing something in order to change it. But if you're then trying to persuade other people in the organization to make a change, then obviously there's a question around, okay, we're going to make a big decision here. What's the credibility? What's the methodology? What's the robustness? So, as we kind of move to this world where, solutions like Relative Insight and others can kind of give you this kind of very rapid set of feedback very quickly, that with great responsibility, great power, you need great responsibility. So because we can find stuff out at nuance very quickly that you can make a move. We also, I think, need to be very credible in what we're saying and how we're reporting stuff. So it's simple, it's easy to understand, and people sort of trust it. So when does this sort of sound familiar to you when you're sort of trying to persuade people to take some action? What are the normal questions that you're getting back from the stakeholder group?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge is being able to show that that's not just one person, because there's always somebody that's going to moan about something. There's always somebody that's going to say something, but it doesn't mean that it's got to be changed. What is good for one person is not necessarily good for another. I talk about the temperature of water. One person might say it's too hot. One person might say it's too cold. What the feedback is that, yeah, but that's just one person. Where it becomes critical is being able to quantify the amount that we're hearing something. So rather than just saying, yeah, we're hearing in the unstructured data that there's an issue with the water temperature and it's too hot, it's being able to say, yeah, 90% of the people who are rating bathrooms as a 1 or a 2, we're rating it because of that, because there's an issue with the water temperature, and it's actually a bigger issue. So that, I would say, is to be able to put the quantification around the comments that we're hearing. And once you can do that and you tie it to the numeric scores, you'll very quickly get the head nods and what we want to be doing.
Yeah, so it moves from being sort of supporting evidence to being the evidence, if you see what I mean.
Exactly, yeah.
That's really interesting. So maybe let's talk a little bit more about, I guess, the AI world. Everyone's AI, of course. Every vendor is summarizing with generative AI. Various different attitudes of sort of senior managements. Can you kind of give your view? I mean, obviously, I'm a vendor. You're a customer. Are you bored? Are you kind of over it? Are you excited? Are you seeing the difference between different, implementations? What's your view of the sort of vendor landscape at the moment?
Yeah, and you're right. Everybody's got an AI solution, whether it's truly AI or not. And there's a lot of different solutions out there. What I would say is, at the top level, it has been hugely useful. And we mentioned earlier, just you don't have the resources to be able to get to some of the information that you want to be able to get to. And being able to understand key topics and key themes and get the examples around that, really, really useful. Where it would be awesome to see things continue to develop is that sports has its nuances. So somebody will say, yeah, that play was sick. And still in traditional AI, I still say, well, yeah, that was a negative comment.
Yeah.
And it's not. And so the more that we can ingrain what is relevant for sports, and particularly for the team. You might have got team A that's all about inclusivity, and you've got team B that's all about glitz and glam, and you've got team C that's all working about hard working. If you can build essentially the brand book into AI, into the analysis, what it's going to enable us to do is to be able to create that insight that's relevant to my team or my sport. It sort of goes sport, type of sport, team. And the further you can get down that funnel, the more relevant it becomes, and the more useful I can take that insight and use it. Because I might see something that would be relevant for team A, but for team C, no, that's what we want to be portrayed like this. And that's great. Or it's not, it's terrible. Why are they thinking of us like this?
Yeah.
And being able to manage some of that. And then I would say the other thing that comes and goes as far as within the AI capabilities is conversational AI. Because I might find out, yeah, there's these problems, but problem A might be something that, yeah, I could deal with that in a year, or it's a longer term problem. Problem B might be something I can deal with for the next game. So
Yeah.
I actually need to do a quick deep dive into the second problem, and I want to be able to ask very specific questions to pull out that incremental information. The more I can do that, the quicker turn I can do on those issues that are really sort of top of mind and critical to the org.
Yeah. And I think, so we see a sort of similar thing, I think, on the immediacy and actually maybe closing the loop on the actions. So
Yeah.
we're starting to see projects now where, it's obvious that an intervention needs to be made. Why are we waiting for the insight to be surfaced to an individual who then has to go and take a sort of manual action to go and do that? Why are we just not automatically doing that? So why aren't the sort of analytic platforms not just giving the right parcel of data to the CRM system in order to send an email to that fan?
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. If I would be able to set something up that would, okay, so it's around this area and this topic, and it's going to go directly to this person because they're in charge of staff, or they're in charge of the restrooms again, or they're in charge of whatever, and it automatically passes out to that person who can make the quick change. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it's all coming. It's all happening.
Love it.
So, well, maybe then we're just like rounding off. Then, like, I guess that was something of a window into the future of sort of fan experience. But like, where do you think fan experience is kind of going? Like, given the macro picture with pro sports, and particularly in the States, where do you think fan experience is going to go now?
Yeah, I think that, that personalized experience is going to become more and more. So historically, it was you talk to me because I was a fan of Team X, and then you talk to me, and probably as it is today, because I sort of have this look-alike. I look like this sort of type of person. I come to this sort of many games, and I always arrive early or late. So sort of person that I am. Where we're moving to, with the amount of data and the integration that we can do, is the ability to do personalized experience. And how does it really get down to, it's not just people that are like me, it's me. How does it really impact me? And whether that is what I'm seeing on my marketing messaging, it's what I'm getting in the arena, it's all the different touch points. The only thing I would say about that is that there is a very fine line, because the intent is always going to be from the teams of this, because I want to maximize your experience. I want to make it as good for you as possible.
Yeah.
But there's always that line as far as being interpreted as being creepy. You know too much about me, and
Yeah.
and when that's not the intent at all, it's all about maximizing the experience. It's not necessarily going to get perceived by that. So how do you do that in a smart way that becomes more personalized, but does it in a way that is only in a positive? And that's somewhat maybe understanding the different fans and what they want to see, and the type of and level of personalized input. And is it here today, and is it here in 3 years? Probably not. But if we're looking 5-10 years down the line, you start to think the information will all be there to do it. The capabilities should be there to do it. But how do you do it? And I think that's a big topic for how you move down that line.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's one for the next podcast. So, I think that we'll leave it there. Pete, you've been amazing. Just to sort of wrap things up, I think, what we sort of heard today was you've got to be looking at the qualitative data, like the feedback from the fans, because the technology's there now to get some really, number one, fast, and number two, quantifiable evidence from the open end so you can make effective change. I think we've also, clearly seen, big revenue outcomes out of this kind of analysis. And if you're not doing it, you're probably missing a trick, whether that's, fan retention or whether that's not maximizing the revenue you could be getting. And then the future is really all about, let's call it personal and positive fan engagement, using technology. The technology's there. We can automate an awful lot. We just need to have the imagination to apply it in the right way. So, Pete, thanks very much. And thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. You can always learn more about Relative Insight at relativeinsight.com, or of course, we're on LinkedIn or we're on Meta as well. Look out for future episodes on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. So until next time, keep turning those voices into action. Thanks very much.